My name is Lenny. I'll be hosting the webinar today. I've got a special guest that I'll introduce soon. And really what we're trying to do with the webinar series is just a little bit around a bit of education with all of these different buzzwords that we see inside of our industry, and especially inside of the industrial information space. So what we're going to cover today is exactly that. We are going to talk around the buzzwords. We're going to try and provide a little bit of clarity around these different buzzwords that you see in our industry. But before that, we're very excited to talk a little bit about our brand refresh. If you haven't seen it yet, you've probably seen it on the LinkedIn posts and on the invites. We've done a little bit of a brand refresh. I'm not going to say too much. Vaughan is going to cover that for us today. And then what we're going to end up with is just a little bit of new functionality that we've added in, something new and exciting that you guys can look forward to in the next release of our information platform. Today, I've got myself, Lenny, as well. I'm very pleased to have Vaughan Rampersant with me. Vaughan is the product manager at Flow Software, and myself, Lenny Smith, who is the customer success manager. And Vaughan is going to talk a little bit around the brand refresh for us. You probably saw a little bit of our catchphrase, it's about time. It's not just about time that we refresh the brand, but it's also all about adding context of time to information. That is what we do here at Flow Software. So without further ado, Vaughan, if you can maybe just kick it off with the purpose of the brand refresh and what we've done.
Yes, thanks, Lenny. As Lenny mentioned, you've probably noticed that our brand has a new look and feel to it. I guess you could say we went back to the drawing board and asked ourselves the question, what does Flow do at its core? And there are 5 core aspects as highlighted here. First, with Flow, you can abstract and model a unified namespace. Second, you can connect to multiple data sources. Third, you then transform your data into information. And 4, you can choose to visualize that information with Flow and or use the bridging capability that Flow offers because it allows you to pass information to other systems. Adding color and dimension to the logo and also opening it up to symbolize Flow's open architecture, we designed the new logo as you can see it, with this logo forming the O in the Flow brand. Flow, of course, a reference to the flow of data. We feel that this updated logo reflects our maturity in approach, in thinking, in our philosophy, and in the product. And we look forward to you seeing this maturity shine through with our latest and future developments. Along with the brand refresh, we also had a challenge running, and we'd like to take a few moments to select and announce the winner of the brand refresh challenge. Lenny, please could you randomly select the winner?
Cool. Yeah, marketing gave me a whole bunch of names, obviously, of people that registered and that linked and posted and shared our linked status on LinkedIn. There was very strict criteria. So marketing gave me a list. I've already got them in. I'm just going to randomly go through them and select the winner. It's all random, I promise. And the winner is James Wise. Well done, James. We will send you, we'll get in contact with you. I do have your email address, and you are the proud winner of $100 Amazon voucher. Congratulations on that. All right, getting back a little bit to the topic of today is a little bit around just adding clarity around a whole bunch of buzzwords. So you probably saw in our invite to the webinar all of these different buzzwords that we encounter pretty much on a daily basis in this information space. And this will be the first of a series of these sessions where we're going to unpack a little bit of these words and just try and provide a little bit of clarity on what they mean and what does it mean for us at Flow Software, and what is the capability that our software brings to the party when we talk around these certain buzzwords. Now, the first buzzword that we chose for today's topic is the word analytics. It is quite a term that's been used pretty much in all the vendors' softwares, is that they do have some or other type of analytics capability. But before we can go and unpack what that means for us, let's just have a quick look at what is the actual definition of the word analytics. Now, analytics is the practice of using data. Very importantly, it's using data to help companies make more informed decisions. and you use certain technologies or techniques to try and achieve that, being predictive analytics, data mining, or applied analytics, or even statistics on that data. And also very importantly, it's related to their industry. And obviously, of course, we live and work in the industrial space. So when we talk analytics, we look at data in our industrial context. Right, so when I read this, I see a few keywords that stand out for me. The first one is obviously using data. But more important than just using the data, it's you doing some other type of analytics on top of that data to transform it before you go and analyze it. All right, and if you've done that analyze, you then interpret it. Now you can interpret it in many ways, visualization and dashboard or charting. And then obviously after you visualize and interpreted that information, you need to make some sort of informed decision around what next. What does this information tell you? Because we now transform data into information. And what are you actually going to do to potentially create a better day when we look at production from that perspective? Now, when we look at a whole bunch of our friends in this space that does analytics, especially in our environment, there's a whole bunch of companies that does analytics on data or transforming data into information. And if we go and look at their websites, and I'm going to pick Flow as the first guinea pig here. If I look at the new rebranded Flow website and I just read a little bit of the catchphrases there, 100%. Flow says that we can make operational decisions with information. So talking about the decision part of analytics, but using the word information, which is quite key here. Reading a little bit more down on the website, there's also a concept there where they say that they've got analytics ready information. Now, what does this actually mean? If I have to ask the question, what type of analytics can I do by just reading this website? Can I do predictive analytics, machine learning or AI, statistical analytics, applied analytics? I actually don't know. And hopefully after today, we're going to unpack what type of analytics we can actually do. I've also went and looked at a little bit of the other vendors, Axiom, Canary. We've got a very good relationship with Canary. And if I read their website, yeah, they say they do data analytics. A little bit different from Flow. Flow mentions the word information rather than data. And they mention that they've got an analytics tool called Axiom. Again, I'm going to ask the same questions around this and what type of analytics can you actually do with this? Predictive, AI, machine learning, statistical. Don't actually know what type of analytics we can do with this. And then I also went a little bit on Seek. They specifically mentioned that they are looking at manufacturing data. Cool, so we know they're playing in our space. And they also say that they've got application that is dedicated to process data analytics. All right, so talking very heavily that they are in the industrial space and doing data analytics in that environment. Again, if I have to ask that question, what type of analytics can we do? Probably not too clear on the type of analytics that we can achieve with this, without obviously going into product demos and features and stuff like that. Now, there's another piece of the puzzle here that I just want to clarify as well, because 3 of these vendors also use 2 different terms. We saw that Axiom or Canary, they talk about data. We saw that Flow at the other hand talked a little bit more around information or having a data or information stream or a pipeline of information. And that's another term that we just need to sort about. When we talk about data management, that's the whole concept of collecting data. It's keeping that data securely, cost effectively, and efficiently. It's a little bit different from what we do at information management, where information management is the notion where we now take this collected data and we process it to analyze and change it into information to distribute. All right, and the next step is then to either store it or to share it out with anybody in the organization. So there's a clear distinction for me in this as well, because when I see the word data and data management, immediately in my mind, I get the notion that this is the job of a plant historian. All right, they collect data very easy. If we think about Canary, it stores vast amounts of data very cost effectively and very efficiently. So definitely something that Canary does. When I look at an information management tool, that sounds a little bit more like a job of an information platform, because we have to clean the data. We have to present data that's truthful, accurate, and it should be easily accessible and in context. All right, now, I think the word context is probably going to be the next series word that we need to kind of unpack and understand what the different vendors think about the word context and what it means in them. And I'll explain a little bit what we mean by context within Flow. All right, so we understand what analytics is, right? We understand we need to use the data. We need to transform it into something that we can use. But what type of different types of analytics can I actually perform on data? There's actually 4 pillars that we can actually define analytics in. And obviously, each and every one of these pillars have its degree of complexity, but also its degree of value that you can gain from it. So when we look at the first one, the first pillar that we're going to talk about is descriptive analytics. All right. Descriptive analytics is the question, what happened? All right. So that is looking at historical data. It might be in real time that you're looking at that historical data, but trying to answer the question of actually what happened for the past hour, for the past shift, or for the past day. Then you look at diagnostic analytics. It's taking the concept of descriptive a little bit further. You're still looking at what's happened, but you want to try and understand why it is happening. So with this one, you probably need a little bit more context to actually have correlation between information points to actually try and understand why is it happening. And then a little bit more complex is obviously the predictive stuff. This is now when we move into the world of machine learning and AI. And that is now the question to what is likely to happen. I like the word likely. It's not probably going to be 100% correct all of the time, but this is now where you train a model to try and figure out where you're going to end up or project into the future to see where you're going to end up with. And then the last one, golden goose, silver bullets, whatever you want to call it, is called prescriptive. Now, prescriptive takes the notion of predictive a little bit further, and they answer the question, what can you actually do to fix it? So it's not just what's likely going to happen, but maybe here's 10 or so points on what you can actually try and do to fix it before it's happening. So it's taking a little bit of tribal knowledge that we have around if a certain fault occurs, what do we do to fix it, and tries to incorporate that into predictive analytics as well. So let's look at descriptive analytics in a little bit more detail. All right, so we asked the question, what happened? And that might be a little bit around aggregating data, but still having that data available in real time, looking at the historical data points. And the questions or the typical things that we do here is we look at reporting and analysis from past data. Right, now what you need to have to achieve this is you need to have a proper data infrastructure, UNS, probably a plant historian, to have all of this data available for us. You need to then have a proper information modeling fundamental on top of this. And the reason for that is that I want to be able to ask this question, what happened, repeatedly every day and get the same answer back. Right, and then I need to show it in such a way with the right visualization that I can easily and quickly understand what happened. And I need to see it as well in context. Now that context can be as simple as the past hour, past shift, past day, and have all of that data in context. So the most effective way to achieve descriptive analytics is to standardize and to automate this. Right, so you need some tool or something in the back end that's going to go and do this every day the same way, have the results available possibly in real time for you, and that when you look at it, it's the same way calculated every day. Now, this is what Flow does. Flow does descriptive analytics, and we do it extremely well. Now, one of the example that I'm going to run through is exactly that. So let's look at a question. What was my overall productivity? That's diagnostic or descriptive analysis. And I might need to have it in context for the hour, the day, or in correlation to yesterday. Now, don't get me wrong, we can do this in a historian as well. So what we've got here is just a visual of a totalizer in a normal historian. And Vaughan, if I want to answer this question to say what was the production for the past hour, I can surely do it manually inside of my plant historian, but it's going to be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, Lenny, you could do it inside your historian, but it is a manual exercise because we have a fairly common scenario where we have a rollover. So we're going to have to work out the maximum before it rolled over, subtract that from the value at the start of your interval, and then take the value at the end of the interval less the rollover value, which hopefully is 0. But if it's not 0, we have to compensate for that and then add those bits together. And of course, it gets worse if it rolls over multiple times within the period.
100% correct. Right. So, all those things that Vaughan mentioned, you need to be able to cater for that. You need to be able to cater for that repeatedly and automated. And another thing is, if we want to look at what was the total for the day, what is a day in relation to data points in the historian? There's no context of a calendar or a setup of what that day is. And again, what we will do with our information platform is we will give you that answer. We will give you the total automated in our back end. Our engine will perform this totalized value calculation. It will aggregate, clean the data, and give you that single result that you can in confidence say what was the productivity for every hour. All right. Let's take it a step further. So we know what the productivity was, but why is it a certain number? All right, so it's low. I know my productivity is low, but why is it happening? So again, we need a little bit of historical information to do that, but instead of focusing on the what, we try to figure out correlation to look at normal occurrences of certain points. Now, very interesting, when I did a little bit of research on this, this is probably the diagnostic step or the analytic step that people try and jippo the most. A lot of the time, people want to go from what happened to what will happen. They want to go straight to predictive analytics without trying to figure out why did it happen. And a lot of business cases can actually be solved by this, by looking at diagnostic analytics. So what you need for this is you need very accurate history. You now need to be able to get disparate data sources in context as well. You need to normalize the time of these different disparate data sources, and we need to be able to perform correlation. We need to be able to slice and dice this information to get a whole bunch of different correlation to the data as well. Now, Flow does provide information for diagnostic analysis, and a typical tool that's very good at slicing and dicing and trying to figure out what the different permutations or the correlations is potentially something like a BI tool, Power BI or a Tableau. They're very good at very quickly at the front end doing the slice and dice, but they need the information to be able to do that, and Flow does provide that. So if we look at our previous example, where we looked at what was our overall productivity for the hour, what if we now want to know with conjunction with the operator or the actual product or the line it was running on the material or the SKU that I was manufacturing? Maybe I would like to know what was that in correlation with the work order or the energy usage. And potentially this, if I want to compare it to yesterday, I need to make sure that I'm comparing apples with apples. So I need to compare it with the same shift, the same operators, and potentially even the same product that was running. So it's a little bit more context that we need to give it. So we need to be able to potentially hook up other silos of information into this. So we might need to get data from our MES database or from our utilities database or from our batch database. And again, the job of an information platform is to connect all of these siloed data points and create one version of the truth of the information that you can now use inside of diagnostic analytics. Next step after diagnostic analytics is obviously now we can only start looking at the predictive stuff. So now we can say, what is likely to happen? And there's two things to predictive analytics. It's obviously trying to predict when things are going to go wrong, but there's also a concept in predictive analytics where we look at projections. projecting a run rate or projecting the current production rate to see if I'm going to hit my end of shift target or my end of day target. Again, we need historical information to do this and to have this forecast capability to do. Now, what you need for this, again, very important, clean historical information, must be very high quality, it must be trustworthy, and definitely, yes, Flow can do projections. So we can do the forecasting and the projection that is required for predictive analytics, but we are not an AI or machine learning tool in that sense. Again, if we look at our totalizer example, if we now need to answer the question, will I make my shift target or where will I end up at the end of the month? Then yes, that is a straightforward projection that we can do on the data. We can take that counter retrieval. We can create a totalized value on top of that for the day. We can project it into the future. And we can now say, you know what, from a projection perspective, where might we end up? So just a little bit of an example there where we've projected that run rate and at the end of the week, where we're going to end up with. The green line is a little bit of regression analysis, and that's just showing that the projection was pretty much on point when we do regression analysis on the data as well. And then the last pillar that we now have is this whole concept of prescriptive analytics. And that is now the question around, what do I actually do to fix it? It's not just enough in this case to know what's going to happen in the future, but what is the top 5 things that I can do now that potentially would go and solve the problem that I might have? So this is obviously the most advanced area or pillar inside of data analytics or data science. And it's interesting enough is that this is a concept that you build. You have the tools in your arsenal potentially to do prescriptive analytics, but you have to have a whole bunch of foundation blocks in place to really make it a data-driven decision support solution. Now, obviously, from Flow perspective, we are one of those building blocks. So definitely, yes, Flow is one of the tools that is needed for prescriptive analytics. But I would not say that we is the all-encompassed solution for that, but definitely a tool in the tool set that you need to do. Now, when you go through these 4 pillars, it's also very crucial to understand where you currently are from an information management perspective. And there's various levels that you can slot yourself into, from the very non-existing kind of solution where there's no data, there's no analytics infrastructure, where everything is a little bit concerned with issues that happen and everybody's running around for printouts. And obviously that is either a risk to your business or a wasteful from a time perspective to get all of this information in place. Then when you only start to get repeatable operational reports that is timely, that is scheduled, that is done in a solution in the back end and give you that every time, every day, that is only when you now start to do descriptive analytics. So it's quite a high up on the pyramid here, and only at level 2 can you really say that you are doing descriptive analytics. And obviously, if we now move a little bit above that, where we now take that data, potentially integrate it into a data warehouse, have the slicing and dicing capability to look at those correlations, then we're starting to move into a diagnostic or a standardized way that all data in our organization is standardized and that I can compare apples with apples. Obviously, on top of that, we then only look at the prescriptive or the predictive stuff, where we now have insight on what's likely going to happen. And then, as we said right at the top, we have our prescriptive or optimized solution. And that is now where you can have everything in quality and in confidence. So yeah, just a little bit of a scale. Where do you see yourself fit in? And obviously, if you know where you are, you can get a good plan on how to get to the next level when we talk about analytics. Cool. All right, so a little bit of something new for the last few minutes here. What we're going to do is look at projections. All right, so what we've done from Flow Software is, if we look at our new website here, obviously brand new website, nice work done by the team. If I want to try and download Flow, I can go to the Try Flow button here, fill in your business details. But the part that I want to get to is a little bit down here at the bottom. We're starting to include examples. So you'll notice that there's the Flow best day sample. So if I click on this, it will actually download a template that you can now actually import into your Flow project. So I've got a blank Flow project running here. I've downloaded that template, and I am just going to go and import it quickly here. So I'm going to go to my downloads folder, select on the model that will now be downloaded from the website, open this up, and I'm just going to import this into this blank model. It's just going to tell you how many measures and metrics it's going to create. And there we go. Now I've got a little sample production dashboard that's looking at my throughput, my energy usage, but it's also going to project for me into the future to see if I'm actually going to make that. And we're comparing it against the best ever day that you had from a production perspective. Now, when we created this, we're also creating it against our simulator. So you can go and simulate it and see what the data is. Or you can actually hook it up to a real historian. I've got a Canary historian here that I've got some tags that I'm already starting to historize. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the retrieval section here, and I'm just going to start replacing this with actual tags from my plant floor. I'm just going to make this a bit bigger. So this is the bad production. So there we go. There's my bad production tag from my historian. Delete this guy, change this to a counter retrieval. Going to do exactly the same for the good production. This whole model is built only with 3 tags. So I need a good production, a bad production, and then the last one that we've included as well is just the actual energy usage. So a little bit of sustainability that we can actually look at what is our energy per power consumption or our intensity when we actually produce a part. All right, so just changing this all to counter retrievals. There we go. Right click, deploy. And that is it. The Flow engine will now do this all in the back end, right? We said we want a tool that's in the back end, does this automatically and repeatable. So we're just going to wait until, there we go, Flow's already starting to process this. If I look here, we've also included a dashboard as an example. So I'm just going to go and refresh this. And let's go and look at my production tracking dashboard here. It should be done. There we go. And there we go. Right, so a very simple dashboard looking at projection. We can see what was our best day for the year so far. If I track this, yes, then we're on par. We're going to just not make it with 2 bottles, 8546 versus 8548. In the bottom here, I can see every hour if I'm above or below that best rate. So I can see with the colors here that I'm not really making every hour to the best of my potential that I can. So a very simple example. Please download this model from our website. There's also a little bit of just an hourly production report that you can also look at, but that sample template is now available, and we will add more. We will extensively try and build more of these models available for you guys to use and really make it as simple as changing out a few tags, and you've got a full-on example of that. All right. So that's the first thing, having that model template available to look a little bit at projections and see how we can go from diagnostic to predictive analytics in our pyramid. The next thing that I want to show is we've added a few more data sources to Flow. Now, Vaughan mentioned that Flow is all about connecting siloed pieces of data sources to add context to one another. So what we've done is the following. I've got a MQTT broker here. And this guy is publishing Sparkplug to a broker. And one of the philosophies of Flow is to also utilize open architectures. And we always have the capability to push a result back onto the UNS, right? So we can take a result that Flow created, a calculation, and we could push it back onto the UNS. So here you can see I've got data. The data is coming in on this topic here, and there's a whole bunch of data. It looks like water meter readings that I want to get. Now, Flow was never ever able to actually consume real-time MQTT data. So one thing that we've added into this is the notion that we can now go and consume a little bit of real-time data and buffer it, all right? So we don't have to necessarily go and store that in a historian. So 3 new data sources that we included for this purpose is obviously MQTT. So we've got this MQTT real-time buffer concept. We've also created one for OPCUA, where I can buffer OPCUA data. And then we also created one for Telegraf. Now, Telegraf is, for the guys that don't know, Telegraf is the data source connector for InfluxDB, sorry. And they have a whole bunch of plugins. And one of the plugins that's quite interesting for me is obviously Modbus. So that means is I can buffer real-time Modbus data and get that into Flow as well. So let's see how we would do that. Let's create an MQTT real-time buffer. Very simple here. Just going to give it a name. I'm going to point it to where my broker lives. And yes, I'm going to say that I want to use the Sparkplug protocol. Give it a username. I do have a username and password that I need to connect with. And let's hit, and I can subscribe obviously to any topic on the Sparkplug. I'm going to subscribe to the wildcard, so that means any of the tags that I'm starting to get there. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to deploy this guy out. All right, so now what's going to happen is that obviously I would need to get a birth. So it's going to go and ask for a new birth certificate from the data. And then only when it's done that, I will get some actually data pushing through. So there we go. There's the command. There's the node birth that we requested back, the device birth, and it's going to start getting data. So if I refresh here, there we go. There's my topic. There's my data. And I am starting to buffer data. Let's just get something that changes a little bit more frequently. There we go. Right, so I've only started to buffer now, so this buffer would now start filling up with data. Now, I've already done this a little bit earlier just to show you guys. I've got a buffer running here, and if I look at some of these water meters, there you can see the totalizer that we're now buffering and that we'll be able to consume. For OPCUA as well, we have the capability to buffer. Obviously, with OPCUA, we need a way to actually configure which tags we want. So on the OPCUA real-time buffer, I can go and configure this. It will browse the OPCUA server for all the tags that's available. So here's a whole bunch of tags. Some of these I'm already buffering, but let's say I want to include this guy. I'm going to enable that to get logged. Let's enable this guy to get logged and this guy to get logged as well. Hit the apply button there, and that should now start to log. And if we're lucky, we will see this namespace here expanding with some new tags. Okay. All right. So again, also for Telegraf, I've got that going so we can get Modbus data into it. So there's a whole bunch of Modbus data that I'm historizing. A nice thing about the Telegraf stuff, I can also start looking at my IT infrastructure. So I can get my CPU detail from that as well. So I can see what is my idle time of my CPU, and all of that data I can now utilize inside of Flow without having to connect it. So we're extending the realm of connectability by including this real-time buffers that we can get the data to. I'm running still in beta here. We'll have this released in our version 6. So please keep on the lookout for that. And obviously, I can then visualize that. So here's that data, utilizing our pass-through chart to look at the raw data that now sits in that buffer. And that is now for OPCUA, MQTT, performance counters, and Modbus. So just very quickly, something new. We're very excited about these real-time buffers. I think it makes it great for smaller applications where we need to get some of these items directly, potentially from a UA server, and then just extending the capability of Flow being able to connect to that. Cool. That is it for today. Thank you, everybody.